Hi, my name is Jason Wattier, and we're here today to talk about how professional networking can make the road to your next opportunity smoother. First off, a little story time to kick things off. And the story is about me. I began my career as an auditor at Deloitte, a large accounting firm, in their Cincinnati office. After about a year of that, I was looking for a bit of a career pivot. At the encouragement of a former classmate from my time at Ohio State, I landed a new opportunity with another accounting firm, KPMG, in their New York City office. While at KPMG, I was able to explore two new roles apart from my initial position at the firm. The first one was in the health actuarial practice, thanks to a connection I made at an internal training event. The other role that I had a chance to experience was in data reporting and management on mergers and acquisitions projects. This latter role was facilitated by a coworker whom I had worked with on a prior project and expressed an interest in gaining more exposure to technology. Lastly, I owe my current position at Q2 thanks in part to a strong connection I met at none other than PyOhio 2018. Each of these transitions was greatly aided by my professional network. While networking wasn't the only reason that I was able to make each move, it is hard to imagine these changes manifesting without networking. I would like to break down what I see as the key components of professional networking so that you can build, develop, and leverage your professional network to make your own career changes easier to realize. Let's talk about the motivation or the why of professional networking. One of the most important questions of any endeavor is, why bother at all with it? There are numerous benefits to professional networking, but three that are job or job search specific are as follows. 1, it's easier for your application to stand out. 2, you get an inside scoop on a company's culture. And 3, it can be a huge onboarding accelerator if you get the job and know someone who works at the company. Let's dig into each of these a little bit more. First, on making your application stand out. I don't want to sell snake oil and say that if you know someone, you're a shoo-in for getting an interview and that you're a shoo-in for getting an offer. That's unfortunately not the case. It's more so that in a sea of applications with many strong applicants, you have an increased chance of getting consideration. So it certainly helps, but it does not guarantee success. Next, with the inside scoop on the culture of a company, there's the opportunity to get a more authentic perspective of what it's like to work somewhere versus the glossy press release or polished image any company wishes to portray when you know someone who works there and has been in the thick of things. Lastly, the flip side to getting insight into the company during the application process is if you get the job and happen to know someone who works at the company or used to work there, they're a huge asset in terms of onboarding. Starting at a new company is much like starting at a new school. There's the initial awkward phase of not knowing what to do, where to look, or who to talk to about this and that. But having someone who you know at the company becomes like the grade school friend you already know, a tour guide of sorts to your new situation. In my case, nothing illustrates the power of these three benefits more so than my college connection who helped me with my opportunity with KPMG in New York. She gave me a tremendous amount of guidance and direction when working through the application process, both in the form of interview pointers as well as a sense of what it was like to work there and why it might be more appealing than my prior job. Once I started, she was a huge aid to me in feeling at home quicker in a new place. She introduced me to a lot of the team and provided countless little tidbits on the company's social norms and habits. Now that we've talked about the why, we're going to spend some time on a game plan for putting professional networking into practice. And this approach is going to be broken down into three components. The who, which is your target audience, the where, aka the arenas in which networking occurs, and the how in terms of how to approach someone. Starting things off, who you try to network with is the most fungible and least prescriptive of these three areas. You do not want to be too strict or rigid. A good connection is a good connection. To the extent that there is some targeted networking and you are trying to identify individuals to link up with, they will generally be either more experienced and or work at a company or industry of interest. Where targeted networking comes into play for me is if a networking effort or activity requires a significant monetary or time commitment, such as going to an in-person conference. I try to only participate in such cases that are most aligned to my future or current interests. For me, I currently work a lot with data processing, and data analysis, most of which is done in Python. Therefore, it makes sense for me to go to Python conferences and network with individuals who are interested in Python or the industries it's used in. On the flip side, I'm not attending or currently planning on attending conferences on such topics as cybersecurity or C++ because they're outside of the scope of my interest. Circling back to an earlier point, another reason for not being too prescriptive on who you connect with is that connections can be connectors to other connections. As an example from my own experience, the individual who helped me land my current job was introduced to me by Bob Belderboss and Julian Secura of PyBytes fame. This is a good indicator that you're doing networking well, when your network helps you to do more networking. Where does networking occur? Well, anywhere where you can meet and interact with people, obviously, but specifically for career-related purposes, the primary venues are company events for internal networking, external events such as conferences and meetups, as well as direct outreach. If available to you, in-person is generally the most effective form of networking. Obviously, we live in different times these days, and in-person is not always feasible from either a cost or health perspective. Outreach or interaction with someone through social media, email, or LinkedIn is still an option. Ideally, these virtual avenues of networking are best served as ways to stay in touch and follow up with pre-existing connections or someone whom you just met with in person. With cold outreach via social media, email, or LinkedIn, the response rate is generally not as high compared with engaging someone whom you've already met. However, virtual engagement is also less costly from a time and monetary standpoint and safer if there are public health considerations. Speaking of cold openings and approaches, how do you strike up a connection with someone? I don't have the exact words that will work in all situations, but suggest a general approach and tone that tends to work. My recommendation, lead with curiosity. There's a quote that I believe embodies the spirit of this directive, and that is, to be interesting, be interested. This comes from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Generally speaking, people love to talk about themselves or what they do or to give advice. So, if it's a speaker at a conference, congratulate them about their talk. If you want to interact with someone who works in industry or company of interest, ask for general feedback or guidance. It would be surprising to be rebuffed when leading with something like, I'm interested in what you do and would like to learn more about it. So, curiosity comes in the form of expressing interest in what someone does or being interested in their advice or opinion on something. A big no-no is not to start off asking for favors such as job referrals or code review. I would hold back on those items unless they are offered or come with a more developed connection. Lastly, the key that cements a connection with someone you've met in person or virtually is following up. I advise, generally speaking, to try to have the initial follow-up be within a week of meeting someone. Then afterwards, keep in touch every so often, which could be once every 4 to 6 months. It could be once a year. It doesn't have to be every week, every month, and certainly not every day. Before rounding things out, a caveat about networking. Networking is not the only part of job hunting. And certainly, as discussed at the opening, there are numerous benefits to networking outside of items that are directly career related. Professional networking for finding your next opportunity or role is a very helpful component, but it's not the whole pie. Networking helps increase your chances of getting an interview, or at least giving your application more consideration, but it doesn't guarantee an offer. I've had interviews at companies such as Google, Peloton, and probably many others that didn't result in offers, but connections in those cases still played a part in getting me into the interview circuit, and that's still a meaningful step. Some closing points of emphasis. First, try not to think about the goal of getting a job referral. It may seem counterintuitive, but although a part of professional networking is about giving yourself a better chance at finding your next role, don't put that pressure on any one connection, because no one really knows which connection is going to pay off, how, and when. Focus on what you can control, which is participation in professional networking. Second, the first few connections in a company or industry or general area of interest are the hardest. I still remember going to PyCon 2018, which was my first major conference, let alone my first Python conference, and I knew only the coworkers who attended with me. At present, I feel much more at home going to Python conferences, but the first couple were the most challenging from a networking and interaction standpoint. Lastly, quality over quantity. It's better to have a handful of good connections who you keep in touch with versus an abundance of people who you met or reached out to but never followed up with. In closing, I hope that I've imparted some food for thought and consideration of the benefits and how-tos of professional networking based on my own experience. My contact information, which you can look me up on LinkedIn via Jason Wattier, and my Twitter handle is included. I would love to keep in touch and expand upon any of these ideas or venture into other ones, or just connect for connecting's sake. Thank you for listening to my talk. Be well and be healthy.